The alien ship Kethfer moved slowly through the empty space where Earth's solar system used to be. Its metal hull was dark gray and covered with strange symbols that glowed blue in the darkness. Inside the ship, Commander Zextal walked through the science lab with his forearms crossed behind his back. His skin was green and scaly, and his yellow eyes looked at everything with cold interest. "Show me the new specimen," he said to Dr. Velterra, who was standing next to a large glass tube filled with blue liquid. Dr. Velterra was smaller than the commander, but just as reptilian. She had been studying dead aliens for over 50 years. Her claws clicked against the control panel as she brought up the information on her screen. "We found this one floating near the gas giant in the outer system," she explained. It was inside a primitive freezing pod. The pod's power had been dead for almost 300 years, but somehow the freezing system kept working. Zextal looked at the creature floating in the tube. It was pale and hairless with 2 arms and 2 legs. Its face was smooth, except for some hair above its eyes and on top of its head. The creature looked weak and soft compared to the strong bodies of the hegemony races. "What do we know about its species?" Commander asked. Dr. Velterra pulled up more information on her screen. They called themselves humans. They lived on the 3rd planet from the star. According to our records, they destroyed their own world. About 300 years ago, when they tried to move a large rock from space, the rock hit their planet instead. Zextal nodded. He had heard this story before. Many young species tried to move asteroids for mining and ended up destroying themselves. It was a common way for primitive races to go extinct. "Specimen has a name," Dr. Velterra continued. "Jake Morrison. He was 32 years old when he went into the freezing pod. He was some kind of soldier for their military. Nothing special about him according to his records." The commander walked closer to the tube and studied the human's face. Jake Morrison looked peaceful, almost like he was sleeping. His skin was pale from the long time in the freezing liquid, but his body looked healthy and strong. "His military record shows he was average," Dr. Velterra said, reading from her screen. "He flew small ships on patrol missions. Never saw any real fighting, never did anything important. Just a regular soldier doing regular work." Zextal was interested in this. The hegemony had studied hundreds of extinct species, but they rarely found living specimens. Most species destroyed themselves completely when they died out. Finding a living human was like finding a piece of history. "What about his body?" the commander asked. "Any diseases or genetic problems?" Dr. Velterra ran her claws over the control panel again. "His body is in perfect condition. Better than perfect, actually. The long time in the freezing pod seems to have made him stronger somehow. His muscles are more developed than they should be. His brain activity is higher than normal for his species. This was unusual, but not impossible. Sometimes the freezing process changed alien bodies in strange ways. Dr. Velterra had seen it before with other species. "Begin the waking process," Zextal ordered. "I want to study a living human before we add him to our collection." Dr. Velterra's yellow eyes looked worried. "Commander, are you sure that's safe? We don't know how this species reacts to being awakened. Some aliens become violent when they learn their race is extinct." Zextal laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together.
"I'll look at it, Doctor."
"This creature is barely 1.5 meters. Tall and weighs less than most of our children. What could it possibly do to us?" Dr. Velterra was still not sure, but she began the waking process. She pressed several buttons on her control panel, and the blue liquid in the tube began to drain away. The human's body started to move slightly as the freezing chemicals left his system. "His body temperature is rising," Dr. Velterra reported. "Heart rate is increasing. Brain activity is getting stronger. He should be awake in about 1 hour."
"Oh."
They waited. Zextal studied the human's military records more carefully. Jake Morrison had been born on Earth in the year 2387. He had joined their military at age 18 and spent 14 years flying patrol ships around their solar system. His records showed he was good at his job, but not great. Been promoted to a high rank. He had never won any special awards. He was just an ordinary soldier. His ship was called the UES Ranger. Dr. Veltara said, reading from the same records. It was on a routine patrol mission near the moon of the gas giant when it lost power. The automatic systems put him in the freezing pod to save his life. Zextal found this interesting. So he doesn't know what happened to his species. He went to sleep thinking everything was normal and will wake up to find out his entire race is dead. That's correct, Commander. He will be the last human in the galaxy. The commander felt a moment of something that might have been sadness, but he pushed it away. The hegemony studied extinct species to learn from them. It was important scientific work. Personal feelings had no place in science, Commander Dr. Veltara said suddenly. There's something strange about his brain patterns. They're not like anything I've seen before. Zextal walked over to look at the brain scans on her screen. The patterns were indeed unusual. Most alien brains showed simple, predictable waves of activity. But Jake Morrison's brain was doing something different. The patterns were complex and layered, like several different types of thinking were happening at the same time. Is this normal for humans? The commander asked. I don't know, Dr. Veltara admitted. We only have records of dead humans. We've never seen a living human brain in action before. As they watched, the patterns on the screen became even more complex. It was like watching a computer that was running many different programs at once. The human's brain was working much harder than it should be for someone who was still unconscious. Maybe the freezing process changed his brain along with his body, Dr. Veltara suggested. Sometimes long-term freezing can cause genetic changes. Zextal nodded. This was possible. It would learn more when the human woke up. The tube finished. Draining and mechanical arms moved Jake Morrison's body to a medical bed. His skin was still pale, but his breathing was becoming stronger. His eyes moved under his closed eyelids like he was dreaming. He's almost awake, Dr. Veltara announced. All of his body systems are working normally. Better than normally, actually. His heart is stronger than it should be. His muscles are more developed. Even his bones are denser than the records show they should be. Zextal was fascinated. It's like the freezing process improved him somehow. Made him into a better version of what he was before. That's exactly what it looks like, Dr. Veltara agreed. But we won't know for sure until we can study him while he's conscious. Jake Morrison's eyes opened slowly. They were blue, like the liquid he had been floating in. Blinked several times and tried to sit up on the medical bed. His movements were slow and careful, like someone who was still figuring out how his body worked. He looked around the room and saw the two aliens standing next to him. His face showed confusion, but not fear. Most species screamed or tried to run when they first saw hegemony aliens. But Jake Morrison just stared at them with those blue eyes and waited to see what would happen next. Interesting, Zextal said. Quietly to Dr. Veltara. Very interesting indeed.
Nice.
Neither of them realized that Jake Morrison could understand every word they had said. The human's enhanced brain had been listening and learning their language from the moment he started to wake up. And now, as he lay on the medical bed looking confused and helpless, he was actually studying them just as carefully as they were studying him. The hunt was about to begin. Jake Morrison sat up slowly on the medical bed and looked around the room. Everything was strange and unfamiliar. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to glow with its own light. The air smelled different, like electricity and something else he couldn't identify. His body felt different too, stronger somehow, like he had been working out for years while he slept. Where am I? He asked, his voice rough from not being used for so long. Commander Zextal stepped forward. Jake heard a mechanical voice. Translating the alien's words into English. You are aboard the Hegemony research vessel, Kethfer? I am Commander Zextal, and this is Dr. Veltara. We found you floating in space and brought you here to study you. Jake's mind was working faster than it ever had before. He could see things he had never noticed before. The way the commander's eyes moved when he spoke. The way Dr. Veltara's claws tapped nervously against her leg. The way both aliens stood, just a little too far away from him, like they were afraid of something. Study me, Jake asked. Why would you want to study me? Dr. Veltara moved closer, holding a small device that beeped and flashed. Because you are the last of your species. Your people are extinct. We study extinct species to learn about them. before all knowledge of them is lost forever. Jake felt something cold move through his chest, but it wasn't sadness. It was something else, something that made his muscles tense and his heart beat faster. What happened to Earth? What happened to my people? Your planet was destroyed approximately 300 years ago, Commander Zextal explained. According to our records, your species tried to move a large asteroid for mining purposes. The operation failed, and the asteroid struck your homeworld. Instead, the impact destroyed all life on the planet. Jake listened to this explanation, but something felt wrong about it. His enhanced senses were picking up things that normal humans couldn't detect. The commander's heartbeat had increased slightly when he spoke about the asteroid. Dr. Veltara's breathing had changed. There were small changes in their body language that suggested they were not telling the complete truth. I see, Jake said, quietly, so I'm the only human left. As far as we know, yes, Dr. Veltara confirmed. We have searched through the debris of your solar system many times. We have found no other survivors. Jake nodded and tried to look sad and defeated. Inside, though, his mind was racing. He was beginning to understand that these aliens were not just scientists who had found him by accident. There was something else going on here, something they didn't want him to know. What will happen to me now? He asked. We will study you, Commander Zextal said. We will learn about human biology, psychology, and culture. Then we will preserve your body for future generations to study. It will be the last record of your species. Jake felt that cold feeling again, but this time it was mixed with something else. Anger, a deep, burning anger that seemed to come from somewhere inside him that he had never felt before. But he kept his face calm and neutral. I understand, he said. I suppose I don't have much choice. Dr. Veltora seemed pleased by his cooperation. The process will not be painful, she assured him. We will learn everything we can about you while you are alive, and then we will preserve you peacefully. Will become part of our great collection of extinct species. Over the next few days, Jake was moved to a comfortable room with a bed, a table, and a small window that looked out into space. The aliens brought him food that was strange but edible, and they asked him hundreds of questions about human life, culture, and history. Jake answered their questions helpfully, but all the while he was learning about them. He discovered that his time in the freezing pod had changed him in ways that went far beyond just making him stronger. His hearing was much better now. He could hear conversations happening in other parts of the ship. His vision was sharper too. He could see details in the aliens' faces and movements that told him things about their emotions and intentions. Most importantly, his mind was working in ways it never had before. He could remember everything perfectly. He could analyze complex problems quickly. He could predict what people were going to do based on tiny changes in their behavior. On the third day, Jake overheard a conversation between Commander Zextal and Dr. Veltara that changed everything. The subject is cooperating better than expected, Dr. Veltara was saying. Most species become violent when they learn about the extinction of their race. Humans were always described as emotional and unpredictable, the commander replied. Perhaps this one is different, or perhaps the long freezing process has damaged his emotional responses. There is another possibility, Dr. Veltara said. The brain scans show that his neural pathways have been completely reorganized. He may not be capable of the same emotional responses as normal humans. Jake listened carefully to this conversation, but what came next made his blood run cold. It doesn't matter, Commander Zextal said. The Council will be pleased to have a living human specimen, especially after what we did to their homeworld. The asteroid guidance system worked perfectly, Dr. Veltara agreed. The impact looked completely natural. No one will ever know that the hegemony was responsible for the extinction of the human race. Jake felt the world stop moving around him. The asteroid had not been an accident. These aliens had deliberately destroyed Earth. They had murdered his entire species and then come to collect souvenirs from the wreckage. The cold anger that had been growing inside him suddenly exploded into something much larger, more dangerous. But Jake had learned to control his emotions in ways that normal humans never could. He kept his face calm and continued to pretend to be a cooperative specimen. Why did you destroy Earth? He whispered to himself. But even as he asked the question, He was beginning to understand the answer. Over the next few days, Jake listened to more conversations and learned more about the hegemony. They were a vast empire that controlled thousands of worlds across the galaxy. They had a simple policy toward other intelligent species: study them, catalog them, and then eliminate them if they might become a threat. Earth had been destroyed because long-range hegemony scouts had detected signs that humans were developing advanced technology. The aliens had decided that humans might someday become powerful enough to challenge hegemony control of the galaxy. So they had acted first, destroying humanity before it could become dangerous. Jake learned that this had happened to dozens of other species. The hegemony would find a young civilization, study it from a distance, and then decide whether it was safe to leave alone or too dangerous to survive. Most species were judged to be too dangerous. The humans showed particular promise in military technology, he heard Dr. Veltara explaining to another scientist. Their rate of technological advancement was accelerating rapidly. Our projections suggested they would develop faster than light travel within 50 years. At that point, they would have become a significant threat to hegemony stability. Jake also learned that he was not the only specimen they had collected. The hegemony had researched ships throughout the galaxy, each one carrying preserved examples of extinct species. They had turned genocide into a science project. But as Jake learned more about his captors, they were also learning about him. And what they were discovering was starting to worry them. His physical capabilities continued to improve, Dr. Veltara reported to Commander Zexthel. His strength has increased by 30% since we revived him. His reflexes are now faster than any human on record. His brain activity shows patterns we have never seen in any species. Is this normal for humans? The commander asked. We don't know, Dr. Veltara admitted. We have no baseline for comparison. But I am beginning to think that the freezing process did more than just preserve him. I think it changed him into something that humans were never meant to become. Jake continued to pretend to be helpless and cooperative, but inside he was planning. He was studying the ship's layout, learning the crew's routines, and figuring out how their technology worked. His enhanced mind was processing information at a rate that would have been impossible for a normal human. And slowly, carefully, Jake Morrison was preparing to show the hegemony exactly what humans were capable of when they had nothing left to lose. Jake Morrison spent the next week learning everything he could about the hegemony ship. Every day, Dr. Veltara would bring him to the medical lab for tests. Every day, he would walk through the corridors pretending to be weak and confused, while his enhanced senses mapped out every detail of the ship. He learned that the Kethfer had a crew of 43 aliens. Most of them were scientists like Dr. Veltara, but there were also 12 security guards and 6 crew members who ran the ship's systems. The security guards carried energy weapons that could stun or kill. The ship had thick armor and powerful shields that could protect it from attacks, but Jake also learned about weaknesses. The ship's power came from a single reactor in the center of the vessel. The life support systems had backup controls in 3 different locations. The weapon systems could be accessed from the main bridge or from 2 smaller control rooms. Most importantly, the aliens had grown careless because they had never faced any real threats during their scientific missions. Jake's enhanced mind absorbed all of this information and began creating plans. But he needed to know more about why. The hegemony had destroyed Earth. He needed to understand his enemy completely before he acted. On the 8th day, Dr. Veltara brought him to a different lab. This one was larger and filled with strange equipment. In the center of the room was a chair with wires and sensors attached to it. We need to perform a deep scan of your brain, Dr. Veltara explained. This will help us understand how the freezing process changed your neural pathways. The procedure is safe, but you may experience some discomfort. Jake sat in the chair and let the aliens attach the sensors to his head. He could have resisted, but he wanted to see what they would learn. More importantly, he wanted to access their computer systems through the neural interface. As the machine began scanning his brain, Jake felt electricity flowing through his head. But instead of just experiencing the scan, his enhanced mind began to follow the electrical pathways back into the ship's computer network. Within minutes, he was accessing files that the aliens thought were completely secure. What he found made his anger burn even hotter. The hegemony had not just destroyed Earth on a whim. They had been watching humanity for over a century, studying human behavior and technology from hidden observation posts throughout the solar system. They had detailed records of human wars, human art, human science, and human dreams of reaching the stars. The files showed that hegemony leaders had been impressed by human creativity and adaptability. Humans learned faster than most species. They solved problems in ways that other races never considered, had a tendency to turn any technology into a weapon and any weapon into something more powerful than its creators had intended. Species shows unusual capacity for rapid technological advancement, one report stated. Human military doctrine emphasizes adaptability and individual initiative. This combination makes them potentially more dangerous than species with superior initial technology. Another report was even more direct. Humans demonstrate psychological traits that suggest they would not accept hegemony authority. Their history shows repeated patterns of resistance to oppression. Come recommendation: eliminate before they develop interstellar capabilities. Jake read dozens of similar reports while pretending to be unconscious during the brain scan. The hegemony had not destroyed Earth because humans were evil or threatening anyone. They had destroyed Earth because humans were too independent, too creative, and too stubborn to be controlled. But the most shocking discovery came when Jake accessed the files about other extinct species. The hegemony had destroyed hundreds of civilizations over the centuries. Any race that showed signs of becoming too advanced or too independent was marked for elimination. The files contained detailed records of how each species had been destroyed. Some were wiped out by guided asteroids like Earth. Others were eliminated by engineered diseases. Few were destroyed by deliberate natural disasters that the hegemony could trigger using advanced technology. And in every case, the hegemony had afterwards sent research ships to collect specimens and pretend to study the tragic extinction of another promising species. Jake also found something else in the computer files. Records of living specimens from other destroyed races. There were 47 research ships in the hegemony fleet, and each one carried preserved examples of extinct species. Some of those specimens were still alive, kept in suspended animation, or in artificial environments where they could be studied. This meant that Jake was not alone. There were other survivors from other murdered civilizations scattered throughout the hegemony fleet. They were all prisoners, all the last of their kinds. All kept alive only to serve as scientific curiosities. When the brain scan finished, Dr. Veltara looked at the results with excitement. "Fascinating," she said to her assistants. "The subject's neural activity is unlike anything we have ever recorded. His brain is processing information at rates that should be impossible for biological tissue." What she didn't know was that Jake had used the scanning process to download massive amounts of data directly into his enhanced memory. He now had complete maps of the ship, full crew records, detailed information about hegemony technology, and access codes for most of the ship's systems. That night, alone in his room, Jake began to plan his escape. But this would not be a simple escape. This would be the beginning of something much larger. He had learned that the Kethfer was scheduled to rendezvous with 3 other research ships in 2 weeks, as the ships would meet at a space station called Research Platform 7-2, exchange specimens, and share scientific data. This meant that Jake would have access to multiple ships and potentially dozens of other survivors from extinct species. More importantly, Research Platform 7 was located near one of the main hegemony fleet bases. If Jake could capture the platform, he would have access to military ships, weapons, and intelligence about hegemony operations throughout the galaxy. But first, he had to take control of the Kethfer, and he had to do it without alerting the other ships or the space station. Jake's enhanced mind began working through the tactical problems. He needed to disable the ship's communications before he made his move. He needed to neutralize the security guards without damaging vital ship systems. He needed to take control of the bridge and the engineering sections simultaneously to prevent the crew from sabotaging the ship. Most importantly, he needed to do all of this quietly and efficiently. The hegemony thought they were dealing with a primitive human who was grateful to be studied. They had no idea that they had awakened something that could think faster, move quicker, and fight more viciously than anything in their experience. Over. The next few days, Jake continued to play the role of a cooperative specimen while secretly preparing for his attack. He used his enhanced senses to memorize the crew's schedules and habits. He identified which aliens were the most dangerous and which ones might be useful to keep alive. He located the ship's armory and figured out how to access it. He also began to change his body in subtle ways. The long time in the freezing pod had given him control over his biological functions that normal humans didn't have. He could slow his heart rate to appear calm while his mind raced with planning. He could increase his muscle tension without showing any outward signs. He could even control his body temperature and breathing patterns to fool the alien medical sensors. Dr. Veltara noticed some of these changes during the daily examinations, but she interpreted them as signs that Jake was becoming more comfortable with his situation. "The subject is adapting well to captivity," she reported to Commander Zexthal. "His stress levels have decreased significantly. His cooperation continues to be excellent. I believe we will be able to gather all the data we need before the scheduled termination." Jake listened to this report and smiled slightly. The aliens thought they were studying him, but in reality, he had been studying them. They thought he was adapting to captivity, but he was actually preparing for war. In 3 days, when the ship would be furthest from any hegemony bases, Jake Morrison would show them what humans were really capable of when everything they loved had been taken away from them. The last human was about to remind the galaxy why his species had been considered too dangerous to live. Jake Morrison waited until the middle of the ship's night cycle to begin his escape. He had been watching the crew patterns for 2 weeks, and he knew that only 6 guards would be awake during this time. The rest of the crew would be sleeping. In their quarters on the lower levels of the ship, he started by using the access codes he had stolen during the brain scan to disable the ship's internal communication system. The aliens would not be able to call for help or coordinate their response when he began his attack. Then he quietly opened his door using the override commands he had memorized. The corridor outside. His room was empty and dimly lit. Jake moved silently toward the ship's armory, his enhanced senses allowing him to hear the heartbeats of sleeping aliens through the metal walls. His bare feet made no sound on the cold floor. The armory was protected by an electronic lock that would have been impossible for a normal human to break. But Jake's enhanced mind had already analyzed the lock's programming during his walks through the ship. He entered the correct code sequence, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside the armory, Jake found weapons he had never seen before. Energy rifles that could punch holes through metal, small devices that fired bolts of electricity, grenades that could create explosions of pure heat. He selected several weapons and tested their weight and balance. His enhanced reflexes adapted to the alien technology almost instantly. The first guard died without knowing what happened. Jake found him sitting at a security station, monitoring displays that showed empty corridors throughout the ship. Jake approached from behind and used a technique he had learned during his military training, but his enhanced strength made it far more effective than it had ever been before. The guard's neck snapped with a quiet crack. Jake dragged the body into a storage closet and continued moving through the ship. His enhanced hearing told him where the other guards were located. His enhanced vision allowed him to see clearly in the dim lighting. Most importantly, his enhanced mind was calculating the timing and sequence of his attacks with perfect precision. The second guard was walking patrol in the main corridor. Jake waited until the alien turned a corner, then struck him from behind. With the butt of an energy rifle, the guard collapsed without making a sound. Jake checked his pulse and found that the alien was still alive but unconscious. He would wake up with a severe headache, but no permanent damage. Jake had decided not to kill the guards unless he had to. They were just doing their jobs. The real criminals were the scientists and officers who had planned and carried out the genocide of his species. The third and fourth guards were together in the main security center. This was more difficult, but Jake's enhanced reflexes made it possible. He entered the room quickly and struck both guards with precise blows that knocked them unconscious before they could sound an alarm. The entire fight lasted less than 3 seconds. With the guards neutralized, Jake moved toward the bridge. This was where Commander Zexthal would be sleeping. And this was where Jake would get the answers he needed. But as Jake approached the bridge, he heard voices. 2 aliens were talking in low tones about something urgent. Jake listened carefully and realized they were discussing him. The human's brain patterns have changed again, Dr. Veltara was saying. The neural activity is now 3 times higher than when we first revived him. I think the freezing process is still affecting him. Is he becoming more intelligent? Commander Zexthal asked. More than intelligent, Dr. Veltara replied. His brain is reorganizing itself in ways we have never seen. He may be evolving into something that normal humans never were. Jake smiled grimly. They were finally beginning to understand what they had awakened, but it was far too late. Should we terminate the specimen early? The commander asked. I don't think we have a choice, Dr. Veltara said. If he continues to evolve at this rate, he may become dangerous. Jake decided that the conversation had gone on long enough. He stepped onto the bridge with an energy rifle in his hands. Both aliens turned toward him with expressions of shock and fear. Commander Zexel reached toward his sidearm, but Jake's enhanced reflexes allowed him to move faster than the alien's eyes could follow. He struck the commander with the butt of his rifle, sending the alien crashing to the floor. Dr. Veltara raised her hands and backed away from Jake. Please, she said through the translation device. We were only following orders. We are scientists, not soldiers. You are murderers, Jake said quietly. His voice was calm, but there was something in it that made Dr. Veltara's blood run cold. You destroyed my world. You killed my entire species. And then you came to collect souvenirs. The decision to eliminate your species was made by the High Council, Dr. Veltara protested. We had no choice in the matter. Jake looked at her with eyes that held no mercy. There is always a choice. You could have refused. You could have warned us. You could have helped us escape. Instead, you helped plan our extinction and then came to study our corpses. Commander Zextel groaned and tried to sit up. Jake pointed the energy rifle at him, and the alien froze. I want answers, Jake said. I want to know everything about the hegemony's operations. I want to know about the other research ships. I want to know about the survivors you're holding from other species. I cannot give you that information, Commander Zexthal said. It is classified at the highest levels. Jake smiled, and the expression made both aliens step back. You're going to tell me everything I want to know, and then you're going to help me contact those other ships. We will never cooperate with you, the commander declared. Jake walked over to the bridge's main computer terminal and began entering commands. His enhanced mind had memorized all the access codes during the brain scan, and his fingers moved over the alien controls with perfect precision within minutes. He had accessed the ship's communication system and begun broadcasting a signal to all hegemony research vessels in the sector. But this was not a distress call. This was something much more dangerous. Attention all research ships, Jake spoke into the communication device. This is Jake Morrison, the last human. I am broadcasting from the captured vessel Kethfer. Your commanders have been lying to you about the specimens you carry. We are not extinct species that destroyed ourselves. We are survivors of deliberate genocide carried out by the hegemony. Dr. Veltara and Commander Zexal looked at each other in horror as they realized what Jake was doing. I am transmitting proof of the hegemony's crimes to all ships in this sector, Jake continued. You will find detailed records of how each species was murdered and evidence of the systematic elimination of any race that might threaten hegemony control. Jake had uploaded the files he had stolen during the brain scan, and now he was sending them to every hegemony ship within range. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. To the specimens being held on those ships, Jake said, You are not alone. Your species were not destroyed by accidents or natural disasters. You were murdered by the same aliens who are now studying you. But today that changes. Jake turned to look at Commander Zextel and Dr. Veltara. Both aliens were staring at him with expressions of disbelief and terror. You made one mistake when you destroyed Earth, Jake told them. You assumed that humans were just another primitive species that could be easily eliminated. You never considered what a human might become when you take away everything he has. To lose and give him time to think about revenge, Jake activated the ship's navigation system and began plotting a course toward Research Platform 7, where 3 other research ships were waiting. You wanted to study humanity, Jake said as he worked. Now you're going to learn what humans are really capable of. You're going to discover why your own records said we were too dangerous to leave alive. The captured aliens watched in growing horror as Jake Morrison, the last human in the galaxy, began to transform from a specimen into something far more terrifying. He was becoming exactly what the hegemony had feared humans might become, a force of nature dedicated to the complete destruction of everything they had built, and this was only the beginning. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the captured HFY as it approached Research Platform 7 through the main view screen. He could see the massive space station growing larger. 3 other research ships were docked to the station, just as the schedule had indicated. Soon, Jake would face the largest concentration of hegemony forces he had encountered since his awakening. But he was no longer the confused human who had woken up in their laboratory 2 weeks ago, at broadcasts he had sent to the other research. Ships had changed everything. Incoming transmission from Research Platform 7. Dr. Veltara announced from her position at the communications station. Jake had forced her to cooperate by threatening to space the entire crew if she refused. The fear in her voice was obvious. "Put it through," Jake ordered. The face of another hegemony alien appeared on the screen. This one was larger than Commander Zexel, with darker scales and more prominent claws. "This is Station Commander Vikmal, Cuthbert. Explain your delayed arrival and the nature of your recent transmissions." Jake stepped in front of the camera. "This is Jake Morrison. I now control this vessel your research ships are carrying. Survivors of species that your empire murdered, I'm here to set them free." Commander Vikmal's eyes widened in shock. "Impossible. You are a specimen. How did you escape containment?" "Your people made a mistake," Jake replied calmly. "They thought humans were just another weak species to catalog and destroy. They were wrong." Behind Jake, Commander Zextal was tied to his command chair, forced to watch as his prisoner took control of the situation. "Station Commander," Zextal called out, "the human is more dangerous than our initial assessments indicated. We must not allow him to reach the other." "Specimens." Commander Vikmal's expression hardened. "HFY, you will surrender immediately, or we will destroy you." Jake smiled. "Go ahead. But first let me show you something." Jake activated the ship's sensors and projected an image onto the main screen. It showed the interior of the HFY's cargo bay, where Jake had placed several devices he had built using parts from the ship's equipment. "Those are fusion charges," Jake explained. "If this ship is destroyed, they will detonate and create an explosion large enough to damage your precious space station. Your research data, your specimens, your personnel, all of it will be lost." This was a bluff. Jake had not actually built any fusion charges, but his enhanced understanding of hegemony technology allowed him to create devices that looked convincing on their sensors. Commander Mal studied the readings for several minutes before responding. "What do you want?" "I want to speak with." "The specimens you're holding," Jake said. "All of them. I want them brought to the main docking bay, where I can see them." "That is impossible." "Specimens?" "They must remain in containment." Jake's expression grew colder. "They're dangerous because they're angry. They're angry because you murdered their families, destroyed their worlds, and turned them into living museum displays. But I can help them. Focus that anger in a more productive direction." The truth was that Jake's broadcasts had already accomplished more than Commander Vikmal realized. On each of the research ships, the surviving specimens had learned the truth about their situations. They now knew that their species had not died from natural disasters or their own mistakes. They had been deliberately exterminated, and they were furious. Jake had included detailed technical information in his broadcasts, information about hegemony technology, ship layouts, security procedures, and weaknesses. The other survivors were now using this knowledge to plan their own escapes. "HFY, maintain your current position," Commander Vikmal ordered. We are sending a security team to board your vessel. That would be a mistake, Jake warned. But he was secretly pleased. He wanted hegemony troops to board his ship. Jake had spent the past hour preparing surprises for any boarding party. He had reprogrammed the ship's internal defense systems. It placed weapons and traps throughout the corridors. Most importantly, he had used his enhanced abilities to turn the Kethfer into a maze that would confuse and disorient attackers while giving him every advantage. The hegemony security shuttle docked with the Kethfer 20 minutes later. Jake watched on the security monitors as 12 heavily armed aliens entered his ship. They moved cautiously through the corridors, expecting to face a desperate human who had gotten lucky instead. They found themselves in a nightmare. Jake had turned off most of the ship's lighting, leaving the corridors in near darkness. His enhanced vision allowed him to see perfectly, but the aliens were nearly blind. He picked them off one by one, using hit-and-run tactics that his military training had taught him but is enhanced. Reflexes made devastatingly effective. The first alien fell to a trap Jake had rigged using medical equipment. The second was taken down by a stun blast from behind. The third managed to fire his weapon, but Jake was no longer where the alien expected him to be. Within 10 minutes, all 12 members of the boarding party were unconscious or dead. Jake had suffered no injuries, but while Jake was dealing with the boarding party, something else was happening on the other research ships. The specimens that had received his broadcasts were beginning their own escapes. On the vessel Hethari, a creature called Vexahan had used Jake's information about ship systems to override his containment field. Vexahan was the last survivor of a crystalline species that could manipulate electromagnetic fields. Within minutes of his escape, it disabled the ship's security systems and was freeing other specimens. On the ship Kalanara, an aquatic being named Silverar had convinced her guards that she was dying and needed immediate medical attention. When the guards opened her tank, they discovered too late that her species could survive in air for much longer than their records indicated. Silvera had enhanced strength in her tentacles that allowed her to crush metal. She used this ability to tear through the ship's interior barriers. On the third ship, Cthora, a gaseous entity called Lumara, had learned to move through the ship's ventilation systems. The aliens had thought they were containing a simple cloud of sentient gas, but Lumara could manipulate electrical systems by direct contact. The ship's power grid failed as Lumara systematically destroyed critical components. Jake watched these developments through the communication intercepts he had set up. His plan was working better than he had hoped. The hegemony had become so confident in their superiority that they had never prepared for the possibility that their specimens might cooperate and coordinate their escapes. Commander Thekmal, Jake called over the communication system. I think you should look at your other ships. On the main screen, Jake could see the station commander's face growing pale as reports came in from the 3 research vessels. All of them were experiencing simultaneous security breaches. All of their specimens were escaping at the same time. This is impossible, Commander, Dekmal whispered. How are they coordinating their actions? 'Cause you gave us a common enemy, Jake replied. You showed us that we're all victims of the same crime. Now we're working together to get justice. Jake activated the Kethfer's weapon systems and targeted the space station's communication array. A single blast destroyed the massive antenna that connected Research Platform 7 to the rest of the hegemony fleet. You're cut off, Jake announced. No one is coming to help you. No one even knows what's happening here. Through the view screen, Jake could see explosions beginning to appear on the hulls of the other research ships as the escaped specimens took control of critical systems. Each species had different abilities, but they were all using the technical information Jake had provided to maximum effect. Commander Thekmal tried to order the station's defenses to fire on the research ships, but Jake had anticipated this. He targeted the weapon control systems with precise shots that disabled them without destroying the station itself. I'm not here to destroy everything, Jake explained as he watched the station's weapons go offline. I'm here to free everyone you've imprisoned and to make sure the galaxy knows what the hegemony really is. Jake opened a new communication channel, this one broadcasting on all frequencies across multiple star systems. His message would reach every hegemony world. allied species, and every neutral civilization within 50 light years. "This is Jake Morrison, last survivor of Earth," he began. "You've captured Research Platform 7 and 3 Hegemony research vessels. We are transmitting complete records of the Hegemony's systematic genocide program. You will see proof that hundreds of intelligent species have been deliberately exterminated by your government." Jake uploaded terabytes of data, records, video files, scientific reports, and communication logs that documented centuries of planned extinctions. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. "The specimens you thought were extinct are alive," Jake continued. "We are organizing. We are sharing information. We are coming for everyone who participated in the murder of our species." Jake looked directly into the camera, and every being who saw his face would remember the cold fury in his eyes. "Thought we were just primitive animals to be studied and cataloged. You were wrong. We are your worst nightmare come to life. We are the survivors of your crimes, and we will not rest until justice is done."